Hello and welcome to our session. Today we are going to do some tissue paper art, and the things that we are going to use is, firstly, I'm using an MDF board like this, a circular MDF board, and I'm using some old tissues that I have with me. Okay, and we are going to use a little bit of paints. So I'm using some acrylic paints. I'll be using some glue, okay, and a little bit of water to make the tissue paper really soft and almost like clay or almost like paint. Okay, so let's get started. And these are very simple things that you will find at home, and you can try it with me. All right, and today's session is all about painting with tissue paper. So let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do today is I'm going to quickly start drawing. Okay, and my drawing is going to be very simple. I'm just making a floral pattern. Okay, I'm just going to make a flower. Now this flower can be any flower. You can maybe draw sunflowers, you can draw lilies, you can draw any flower that you want. So I'm keeping a very simple flower. Also drawing some leaves, okay, to go with it. So maybe just like that, and some more pattern, or just to make it a little more interesting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some smaller and larger flowers. Okay, so this pattern, design, whatever you want, you can choose whatever you like, you can do that. You can add flowers, you can add petals, you can add different elements. So I'm just going to draw something like this, then making more segments so that I can add some beautiful colors together to create something fun. Okay, so here we go. All right, now the next thing that I'm going to do is, now this is my design ready. Maybe I'll add another element somewhere here. Okay, maybe I'll just add half a flower, just like this, because it's looking slightly empty. And maybe I'll add another leaf over here on top. Okay, so this is what my composition kind of looks like. You can divide it into smaller parts if you like. So maybe you can also go ahead and draw another line, so that we have enough segments to make different colors, to add different colors to it. So let's just go with it. Okay, so now the next thing that we are going to do is I'm going to take some tissue papers. Okay, and now I'm going to tear them apart. Okay, I'm going to make small pieces of the tissue. Yeah, I have multiple plates over here. Okay, so we have multiple plates, so I'll have some few colors that I'll be making. So now what I'm going to do is just going to tear off all these sheets that I have. So our artist Joshua sir had already done once. I don't know if you all had participated in that one, but we have already shown this, this type of an art form before, the tissue paper art, where Joshua sir had shown us how to make Homer Simpson, and he was hiding behind the trees. I don't know how many of you all watched it, but do check that video out as well, and you will see how beautifully that design came out. So I'm just going to tear all the tissue paper together. Okay, now for this artwork we'll need quite a lot of tissue paper. Basically we have to make it almost like a thick paste, like a paste consistency. Okay, it's like creating textured art. How many of you all have created textured art? You can say me in the chat box. I'll know how many people have created textured art before. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak it in a little bit of water. Okay, so I'm just going to put some water in this. Okay, I'm going to soak all of our tissue paper just like that, and I'm creating. Okay, let's add some more tissue paper to it. Okay, basically we have to make like a paste or a pasty consistency. Okay, so here we have our tissue paper. Let me just show you a zoomed in view of it. Okay, so here, now the next thing that I'm going to do is, let me quickly add some more to it. Okay, now let's add. Okay, so I have added enough water, but now also let's add a little bit of paint to this mixture. Okay, let's add some paint. So now today what I'm going to use is a special tool, a tool that's called a tweezer. Okay, so this is a tweezer because it will be very difficult for me to place this paint or textured paint that we are making with my fingers on the board. So that's why I'll be using the tweezers. Okay, so let's see how. Now let's make the paste. I'm going to use a little bit of glue. Any glue is okay, any white glue. Okay, I'm adding some white glue to this. This is also, the glue will also make the the paste a little firm. Okay, so it will make it very firm. All right, and now I'm adding a little bit of paint. So let's start with the lightest shade first. So I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow paint to it. Okay, and let's try and kind of blend it in. Okay, now make sure that all of it blends in really well, and it's okay to get your hands dirty as well. If you don't have any tweezers, if you don't have all these things, you can use your fingers as well. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it rest for some time. Make sure that all of it gets mixed in properly. Okay, so I'm just going to make it really small and tiny so that we can work with it. Okay, now this is my first shade of yellow. Now what I'll do is, let's work one by one, which is, let's just work with all the things that we have first. So there is this yellow paint that we have made now, a yellow textured paste. Okay, and we can directly start placing it onto our board. Let me just add a little bit of more glue so that we have the paste ready, and once it dries up, it's going to be really hard, and nothing will fall apart. So make sure you add enough glue so that it doesn't, or the parts or these small pieces of our texture paint doesn't fall off. Okay, so now we have this yellow texture paint. Now another thing is, if you don't have an MDF board, or if you don't have you can make it on coasters, you can make it on a paper as well. You can make amazing textured art cards, greeting cards, right? So you can use those. Okay, now I'm just taking my board again. Okay, I'm going to place the yellow paint. Okay, now here, see, look at this. I'm just using the tweezer, picking up a little and placing it wherever I want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to make this flower into a nice bright yellow flower. Okay, making sure that I put it properly down. Okay, now let's move ahead and use a little more to place it, just like this. Okay, and don't worry about getting it all messy or even if it goes out a little of the line, that's absolutely fine. Okay, because then we'll cover all of this area as well. Okay, let's go ahead and add all the pieces in these tiny parts that we have created. Now this is a little therapeutic because you can add all these tiny things here, make the leaves, make the petals, and you don't need a lot of colors to make different colors. Like the primary colors can be used to make a lot of different shades that you need in your painting. So the primary colors are yellow and blue and red. If you have these three colors, you can create any color that you want, absolutely any color that you want. So these three primary colors cannot be made otherwise, right? So that's why it's called primary colors, which means if I want like a orange color, I can mix primary colors and create orange color. Like if I mix yellow with red, obviously everybody knows this, but if you mix these two colors, you get orange. But how do I get yellow? I mean, if that's why it's called a primary color. I mean, you can't mix any colors to get the color. That's why it's called a primary color. So here I have finished the first flower. Okay, now to this very same color, what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of red to make it orange. Alright, and then we'll finish this flower as well. Also, let's add a little bit of orange in the center. Now again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of red paint, and let me just create, because I have some extra left over here, I'm just going to use my paintbrush again, adding a little bit of red to this, and I'll create a nice orange shade. Okay, so let's create a nice looking orange shade. And if at any moment you think that the paste is getting slightly dry, what you could do is add a little bit of water to make it that similar consistency. Okay, so here you can see that it was getting a little dry, but as soon as I added the red paint to make this orange, then it became a little more liquidy and it's a good consistency now. I like what the consistency is looking like. So basically it's just like a textured paste that we are creating. Okay, and I got this pair of tweezers for 20 rupees from a shop. So it's very inexpensive. So you can probably buy the pair of tweezers, or you can do it with your hands as well. There's no harm in doing it with your fingers because it's anyway acrylic, it will get washed off easily. Okay, so here I start placing the red color again. I mean the orange shade, and then you can just spread it out with the tweezer. Make sure it's placed evenly. And it's okay if you have a little bit of yellow that's seen through it. It will look like it's shaded a bit. Okay, so let me get it slightly like this so that you can see it properly. Yeah, I'm just going to push it on my board so that it spreads well. So like this, I'm going to complete the entire painting with tissue paper, glue, a little bit of water and acrylic paint. It's like the acrylic paint and the fevicol or the glue becomes like a binding agent. Okay, so it becomes almost like a binding agent for it to be like this paste consistency, and it will stick to the board directly. so we don't really need to put extra glue on the board first. It's going to stick anyway to the board. Make sure that you add enough glue to your paste when you're making it. Okay, so just like this, I'm just going to turn this around. Okay, so I'm using my tweezers to pick up the paste. Okay, placing it here like this, and I'm just going to dab onto it just like this for it to spread properly or to spread evenly. Okay, now again the last petal, I'm going to spread it. If you have any questions, you can write them in the comment section, and then we will definitely answer all your questions. Okay, you see a little bit of shade that's happening over here. It's because the yellow can be seen through a little, and that's absolutely fine. It looks good because it has a little bit of shade. Now let me use the same red, because the same orange shade, it's more of a reddish orange color. I'm going to put in the center of this flower as well. Okay, so just like that here. Okay, if I can just show you a slight close-up of what it looks like this. See, look at this. Alright, let's move ahead and let me add a little darker shade of red to the same, and maybe we'll add another tissue paper to this. So as and when you think you're running out of the paste, we can quickly add some more to this very exact same. So I'm just adding a little more or adding one more tissue paper, and make it as small as you can, so that it becomes a nice texture and you don't get big blobs of tissue coming out, right? So just make it as thin or as tiny as you can, the pieces, so that you get easy or nice consistency throughout. The paste consistency will be equal throughout. Okay, now let's add some water to this, a little bit of water and some more darker paint. And I'm adding a bit of glue. Okay, mixing it again into a good consistency for me to work with. Okay, now see how this color has become really dark. From a orange shade, it will go to a nice dark shade. Okay, again creating a paste-like consistency. make sure that the paper becomes really thin and malleable, so it can become like a nice paste. Now this is how you can also create you know uh, paper mache as well. But paper mache, you kind of create a similar way. It's just that you soak the paper in water for quite a long time, and once the paper is kind of very mushy, okay, then it is drained, and then there is a lot of elements added like fevicol, and sometimes even a little bit of the wall putty or such things are used. Fevicol is actually the main binding agent, which makes it really, really stiff once it's dried up. Okay, so this is how paper mache products are also made. So you kind of create this, and then it can be, created into bowls, into different things. Hi, yes, Sumana ma'am. Yes. So what I'm using is I'm using tissue papers. Okay, I'm using some fevicol or any glue, white glue will do. I'm using water. Okay, a little bit of water, and I'm using acrylic paints. Those are the things that we need to create this paste. That's it. And then I have my MDH board, okay, on which I have done this design. You can do any design that you like. I'm also using some regular tweezers, okay, the tweezers that we get in a grooming kit. I'm just using those type of a tweezer to create, or to place it just like this, so that I don't have to make my fingers messy. But it's art, so you can literally use your fingers as well to create art. So yeah, so here again, now this entire area I'm going to do a darker red. Okay, I'm just going to place it and then flatten it out, okay, to make it an even layer. So just like this. I'll be making some more color, so yes, so I'll be making some more color, so stay tuned to see how I'm making the next batch of color. Okay, so just like this, I'm placing the entire paste on my MDF board. Okay, all right. Okay, and let me also place a little bit of red in the center of this flower. And maybe in the center of this one too. Maybe I'll put another color on top of this as well, because the dark, the orange is not very, very light, so the darkness. Can you see the color? I think it looks good. Now I'll be making a slightly darker shade of maroon, so I'll be using, I'll be using a little bit of blue to create purple in the very shade itself. So here I'm just adding a little bit of blue in the same red that I have to create a slightly darker sort of a shade. Okay, almost like a deep purple. Although it looks like a dark blue on the camera, it is slightly on the purplish side. Okay, so here again towards the edges I'll add this darker color. We place it here. Now similarly, you know, instead of just doing a floral pattern, what you could do is you can take an MDF board and maybe create a nameplate like this. Like, you know, you write your name or your house number on this and then you design it like that. So these are the different type of things that you can do with such artwork. So maybe design a nameplate or a house number plate, or you know, just like a beautiful painting of a scenery, or maybe you traveled somewhere and you want to recreate that, so maybe you can make that. Or even if you do slightly smaller ones on a paper, those can be used as a great card idea, right? So it will look like a nice card once it's all dried up. You can use it. Okay, now the color is looking very, very dark on the camera, but this is a nice shade of purple. I will probably post a picture on our Rooftop app, yeah, you know, our Instagram page, where you all will be able to see it clearly. So maybe I'll post the picture over there, and also on our WhatsApp groups. Okay, so here, and let me put the same color on the top to balance it out. Now there is enough red on the top of my board and the bottom of my board. Now it's very important to balance the colors out in a few places. So sometimes what happens is, see, like now here the red is only at the bottom, and all of this would have been too dark, or maybe a very light shade of yellow, then it would have been too much for me. But since there is enough red on top and at the bottom, it kind of evens it out. So if I only keep this darker shade of purple at the bottom, okay, if I can just show it, it's still looking very dark. Okay, so a darker shade of purple only at the bottom, it would look too heavy, right? So I'm just going to add the same purple on the top as well. Okay, in this leaf pattern, let me just add a little bit of purple so that I can balance out the color or the shade on the top and the bottom. Now in this similar pattern, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, or I'm just going to start painting the entire board with the same technique. Okay, so let's go in for a green color next. So I'll just make another shade. Okay, so now again let's repeat the process like how we had done before. I'm taking another paper plate. Now this paper plate is very thick, otherwise it, you know, if I would have added a lot of water, maybe, you know, it wouldn't have survived the journey. But yes, since this paper plate is slightly thicker, you can use such plates. And also I wanted to use something that I can, you know, use and throw probably, because I don't want the color to stick on my palette because I'm using Fevicol. So you know, there's a chance that it may stick to my palette and my palette may get damaged. So I'm using use and throw or disposable plates because, you know, it's easier that way for cleanup as well. Okay, making small just small pieces so that it becomes easier for us to work with it later on. Once all the paint and all the things are added into it, it becomes easier for us to make the paste. If I would have kept bigger size pieces, then the blobs that we make, those would have been really big in size. We wouldn't have gotten the texture that we wanted. So that's why I'm making that really tiny. Pieces will be really tiny. So that I get a good texture. Yes, absolutely. You can use home delivery food containers, you know, something that you can use and throw later on, and something that you won't spoil in the longer run. So you know, it's good. Like you can use, yes, absolutely use food delivery containers. Okay, now again let me put a little bit of water in this. Okay, I've mixed a little bit of water. Alright, the next thing that I'm using again is a little bit of yellow and very little blue to create green colors. So since today I'm only using primary colors to create all my shades. Okay, so here you can see that I have mixed a little bit of yellow with my, so the blue will be very minimal. Okay, and then once I've mixed, I'm just going to add a little bit of the glue to bind it all together. Okay, for it to stick to my board properly. And the quantities, I mean, you know, you don't really need to measure any quantities, but I mean, let's just eyeball it. So you know, whatever you think seems good, like consistency wise, you can use that. Okay, so let's just keep mixing it till you get a single color consistency. Now see here, it's still very shaded. Now if you want to use a little bit of shading, that's also fine. You can use a little greenish bluish shade, but I would prefer a single consistency of sorts. So then I'm just going to mix it really well. I'm using my paintbrush itself to kind of even it out. Okay, so I'm just using my paintbrush to make it even. Okay, making it as even as possible. Okay, now I'm happy with the consistency. Now I will start using this paste wherever I want the greens to be. Okay, using the tweezer again. Let's go in for the green, the shade of green. Now tweezers become really helpful because they have a thinner, it has a thin tip, so it can go to all these minute, teeny tiny places, and you can kind of push them around, okay, to stick into the small areas that your fingers probably can't reach. That's why the tweezers, otherwise fingers will also do a great job, like there's no problem. If you don't find the tweezers anywhere, that's absolutely fine. So just like this, I'm using the tweezer to push the extra layer around. So now my layers will look very even or the same height if I keep using the tweezers. So it becomes easier for me to flatten it out as well. So since we are doing this and using a little bit of color theory, let me also tell you all that there's a color wheel, and that's widely used, and the red and the green are complementary colors of each other. That's why when you see a lot of saris, you see a lot of different things, even logos, they have such colors very close to each other, which look really good together, right? So that's because these are complementary colors, contrasting colors, okay, and that's why they usually go well together. It looks really good next to each other. Okay, let's move ahead and let's add this green maybe in another area on the top over here. Okay, so just like this, I have covered another tiny area in a little bit of green that I had left over. Okay, so you can make small batches of this texture paint and use it, and using food containers is great to like store this paste as well later on if you want to store it. And if you've made a lot like this, like I have made an extra batch of this dark purple, so maybe you can use it again. You can keep it in an airtight container and use it again. Okay, so now I'm just adding a little bit of white in the dark purple that we had made to create this lighter shade of purple. Okay, we have a question. Can you tell me what is Alice blue? Okay, Alice blue is it's a very light shade of blue, and it's like one of the pastel shades of blue. That's the Alice blue color. So it's used in a lot of paintings where you see a lot of sea and such things. So there you use a lot of Alice blue. It's basically a very calming blue color that you see. So that's the Alice blue shade. I'm adding a little more white to this shade of purple that I have. Okay, and I'm going to place it again very close to these smaller parts. Okay, now what I can do is I can also create almost like a ring around this flower. Now it's very important that you place it only where you want it to be, otherwise it may start spreading. That's why I'm using the tweezers to put it in, like minute places, fine details, to add all the extra smaller details. Just like this. For Alice blue you can mix so it's a very pale blue, so you can mix blue with white, and so yeah, that's about it. Lots of white and very little blue, like a light sky color blue, or it's almost like the blue is almost invisible. It should look a lot of white and maybe a little bit of blue, very little blue. So that's the Alice blue shade. It's almost like a sky blue, but even lighter than that. So maybe you can use like a cerulean blue, and maybe just one drop of cerulean blue and lots of white. Okay, now the next thing that I will do is I will add a little more red to make this purple a little brighter. Okay, so here you can see the color that I'm mixing. Okay, let me add a little more towards the edge over here of this flower. Okay, going in for the next color now, I'll be using a different shade of yellow again. Maybe we can use a little bit of white as well. That will also look good. So maybe first we'll use a little bit of white, and then we'll create the light, or like orangish yellow color. You can create any colors that you like with different shades, and you can use any of these colors. Let's try not to use black in this one. Okay, now I'm adding the white acrylic paint. And I'll add some glue. And let's mix it again. Again, creating a paste consistency. Maybe a little bit of water. Okay, now I have a good consistency of my paste again to work with. Let's make this into a nice white flower. And just like this, I'm spreading the white throughout. Okay, now let me add a little bit of white on the top as well over here, or in fact let me add it to this patch so that all my darker areas will get slightly brighter with the little bit of white. just like this. I've added a little bit of white. Okay, now to this I'm adding a little bit of yellow to make it slightly lighter in shade, like a light yellow. Maybe we'll add some more paper to it. Thank you so much. I can't wait for the entire, can't wait for it to finish. And then I'll be posting it on our group, WhatsApp group. I hope you're on the WhatsApp group as well. I'm adding a little more of white and the glue, because I added a little bit more of the paper, tissue paper. Again, I'll use I'm just using a bigger brush to make it flatter or to create the paste. Okay, now using this very lemon or a very light yellow to cover this entire area over here. Now you have to make sure that you don't disturb the rest of the elements, like this flower shape, okay, and this small little patch over here. Just make sure that the colors don't really blend very well. See, since I am doing a YouTube live, I don't have the liberty for it to rest well or to dry before I add the next layer. But when you're working with it at home, just make sure that you wait enough. Okay, you can also wait for one layer to dry up Okay, maybe this in this layer to dry up, and then you can start working on the next adjacent layer which is touching it. Okay, otherwise there's a chance that the colors may start spreading into each other. That's the only worry. Otherwise it's absolutely fine. You can do it like, you know, like what I'm doing right now on the spot as well. But if you wait for a bit, you can create, you know, different layers next to each other without them spreading even a bit. Now since adding this yellow, like, you know, I've added the yellow, suddenly the entire board has brightened up a little. If you can see, it has brightened up a little bit. Okay, let me add some more yellow to this side. Do try this at home and please post a picture on Instagram, and if you do, tag us at Rooftop app and we'll definitely see it and comment. Also, you can share it on the WhatsApp group if you create it with us. Okay, here I'll just make another small corner because I have an extra little paint left over with me. I'll just add it a little bit on top in this area. You know, you can revise your designs on the spot if you feel like. Maybe I'll add this in the entire top portion because I think it's looking very good next to this orange shade. Okay, finally this color is done. Let's move ahead and add a little bit more on this edge over here. Okay, so there we go. And the last color that I'm going to make is a nice green shade. Again, let me quickly tear some more paper and create a final light green shade. Okay, that can go, or maybe like a darker green. Let's make a darker green shade. Or should we do a yellow, orange? Let me know in the comment which color should we do in the final area. Okay, then I'm finally going with a very light shade of orange. Like a pastel shade of orange. Let's see how it goes. Alright, making the final shade. Okay, maybe I need a little bit of white in it. To create a nice peach shade. Oh, I like this color that I'm making. See, look at this, a nice yummy peach shade. Okay, so let's use this nice peach shade finally in the last few areas that are left, and our textured art or tissue paper art will be ready. Here, let's place it here first. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sumana ma'am. Okay, and we are done. So this is the final outcome. Let's see what it looks like. So here is the final outcome. Okay, if you want to shade it a bit, you can do that as well. And let's see. Okay, all right. So this is what it looks like. And thank you for joining in today. And we have our next workshop tomorrow at 11 a.m. See you. Bye bye. Thank you for joining in.